Hello, in this recording, we're going to talk about how to build an off-cycle increase process in SuccessFactors using MDF objects. I'm here connected in SuccessFactors as a manager, Allison, and Allison is on the profile of one of our team members, Claire, and we can see here the compensation information portlet, and within the same block, if we scroll down to the bottom, or if we also use here, so we can see it here, or if we also use the arrow, we can get to an MDF object here. So MDF stands for Metadata Framework, and it's custom objects with custom fields that we can create in SuccessFactors. We can have specific formula or rules or approval workflows tied to them. And so I built this off-cycle increase process, which is available only for managers in HRBP in this environment. And so let's do a quick demo. So if I click here on add a new off-cycle increase as Allison, I get this screen here. And the first thing we see is that there is an effective date. So this field cannot be removed. If you want to keep the effective dated MDF portlet, you have to show it. But I built a rule that prevents any save if the date is not either today or in the future. So let's do a demo. So if I select May 9th, automatically I get a message that says, please correct, effective date must be either today or in the future. And it would do the same if I tried to save the entry. So we're going to put it back to the 17th, today. And then we have a second field called reason, where I tied this field to a pick list in the pick list center. So I designed the pick list before I created the field in my MDF object, so we can see catch up on competing offer, extraordinary performance, market adjustment. So if we do extraordinary performance, these fields are highlighted in red because they're mandatory. So you wouldn't be able to save, we wouldn't be able to save if we don't add something in here. So if I add something here, and then what you may have seen is when I selected a date, automatically these information here got populated. So the current annual salary of Claire, the currency of the annual salary, USD, and her current compa ratio as of May 17. And further down below, we have a proposed increase percent with a help text that says get help with proposing. So if I click here, you get the text as maximum is 10%. And so let's look at what happens once the manager proposes an increase. So if I say 4%, for example, and I click outside, then automatically I see the new calculated proposed salary, the final salary, and the new compa ratio, obviously based on the same pay grade. And so it's really it's a rule of 3 that recalculates the new compa ratio. We'll look at the design of this MDF in a little bit. And then something else I wanted to explain is that what's great about this design is that you can you can have specific rules to tie the increase to different approval workflow. So you can build rules with if condition, and they can be very complex, that say if the increase is less than 5%, or less or equal than 5%, then the workflow is going to be this. If the increase is greater than 5%, then we're going to have a different approval workflow with different approvers. So let's do a demo of this. So if I click on save here with my 4%, what I see is that there is a workflow to validate the increase. And so if I click on show the workflow participants, it's the HRBP for Claire, Juliet Wood, who's going to have to approve. However, if I do 6%, and then I can see when I try to save. So first of all, you probably saw here the proposed salary got recalculated, the new compa ratio as well. And when we try to save, because it's greater than 5, now I have the HRBP and the managers that's going to validate this this design. So when we hit confirm, then it all goes, it's all pending. So we can see here the history as the manager. And so if we wanted to, we would have to connect as the people that are pending approval to approve this MDF object and make and confirm the data. So I'd like to show you how it's built because I think it's really something that could add value to a lot of customers. So it's built first in where we build MDFs, configure object definition. And in configure object definition, actually, I'm going to go back as myself and not as Allison, as the super admin of this environment. And here in configure object definition, we'll look for an object called off-cycle increases. So we search for object definition and off-cycle increase. So the first step when building this is to give it a name and an ID. In this particular case, the ID is not exactly what I wanted. I started by doing a demo for a customer on how to build calculated fields in MDF objects, and then I quickly built up and added more fields and had this purpose in mind to show a full off-cycle increase process. So I couldn't change once the MDF is created. We cannot change the ID of the MDF. So I was able to edit the name, but not the ID. We want the effective dating to be basic. That's really important. And then we don't have to touch any of this. Maybe you want to do the API visibility as editable if you want to use the integration center after, or do scheduled jobs to take the value in the MDF object and put it and override the recurring pay component, for example. So you want to have this as editable. And then it comes down to these fields here. So we have the external code that has to be user. That's really important. The effective start date needs to be there, and it has in details here, when you click on details, it's tied to this rule that I demoed, the force effective date to today or future. So it has to be placed on the start date, on the effective date, so that it triggers that error message when someone selects something in the past. So if I click on view rule, we can see here the rule is saying the context of the rule is MDF calculation example here, and then we have if MDF calculation example effective date is before today, then raise the message off-cycle increase date with error severity and the text that appears. So these rules, these messages, they are configured in manage data, and if we go there, we click on message definition, we create a new message definition, and then we can find it when we build the then condition in building this rule here. So that's it for the effective date. Coming down here, the custom reason is a pick list. So we need to create the pick list first in the pick list center. I won't go into the detail. It's pretty straightforward once we have access to the pick list center here. Sorry, pick list center, this one. And then, so custom comments. So to make a field in the MDF object mandatory, we have to click here on required equal yes. Then current salary. So one of the things that also we saw in the demo is that when we enter a proposed percentage here, or the new salary and the new compare ratio get defaulted. So that would be done in details, and at the bottom of this custom proposed percent is a rule that's here, set new salary and new compare ratio. So when we click on it, it's a basic rule, and it says it's always true, and then it says if if always true, and then set MDF calculation example, new proposed salary to be equal to, and then it's a calculation. So to do that, I'm going to take action on this so that we can see how exactly it's built. So these calculations here that I built, they are built through a math expression. So you first select the set, and then the field of the MDF object that you want the output into, and then to be equal to math expression, and then you can build your math expression. So we can see here when I was saying the new compare ratio is a rule of 3, that's exactly what it is. It's the proposed salary times the current compare ratio divided by the current annual salary, and that gives us the new compare ratio. So math expression is the way to go to build these rules. And then once the rule is built, then we have to tie it to the field that is being edited, and based on its value, the new compare ratio, new salary have to be dropped, which is here proposed percent. proposed increase percentage. There's also a rule, the rule to prevent, to make sure that the value does not go over 10% is here. We didn't demo it, but if I were to type 11 and try to save, I would get a message that says, actually I forgot to change it here. I created the message definition, but I didn't change it. I think it's called capping at 10%. And we can go ahead and test it in a few seconds. Something I didn't show is just very similar to these rules that we built on the proposed percentage here. In order to display the current salary, the currency, the current comp ratio, the rule has to be on one of the fields that is editable on screen. And in our case, I picked the effective start date. So if we do here, effective start date, if we click on details, actually it's not on this one. It must be then on the external code that I have it. Or no, actually it's on here, initialize rules. So I have initialize rule, it's called set current salary and current comp ratio. And if I click on it here, I can see it's very similar to the one on the new proposed new salary and the new comp ratio, except it doesn't have any math expression. It's basically, if I do a take action, it's basically current comp ratio to be equal to, and then we go and navigate through the system, select the comp ratio through employment details, comp information, comp ratio is greater than 0, and so on and so forth. Same thing for comp ratio for base annual salary and for currency. I added here all the rules that are showing an error message when, for example, for the effective date or for the percentage, if it's greater than 10. I also added as on-save rule, so it's the exact same rule, but it's also tied here. And then the only other rule that we haven't seen here so far is this one. So this is the rule that controls which approval workflow is going to be triggered when we based on the percentage that is proposed by the manager. So if we click on this rule, we can see here it's a rule for MDF-based objects, workflow context, and it says if off-cycle increase, proposed increase percentage is greater than 5, then the workflow should be this, HRBP and managers. If the proposed increase percentage is less than or equal to 5, then it's this one, HRBP only. So that's how we get to these different workflow based on the proposed. So it could be anything. It could be if the country is this and the proposed increase percent is that, then trigger this particular workflow. Although, to be honest, this example that I just gave is not really relevant because the complexity of having different workflow by country is managed directly as part of the workflow design when going to manage workflows and dynamic roles. I won't go into the detail of that, but an Employee Central consultant could help in building all these dynamic roles to tie specific groups to specific legal entities or countries and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't put the complexity in here, I would put it in the way the workflows are set up using dynamic roles. So I think this concludes the demo. What I wanted to show is actually an example that will take us through how do we edit this existing MDF to, for example, display a guideline. So for example, if I wanted to add a proposed guideline, so we could do take action, make correction. We could add a new field at the bottom of this MDF, which would be called guideline. It would be of type string, and then we'll move it up to right next to the reason for increase, or maybe actually above the proposed percent here. And so first we want to save this field. So by going here on save, and then do a take action again. Once the field has been saved, we're going to edit a few things. So take action, make correction, and then we go to the guideline field. and we're going to give it a good name. First, we're going to make it read-only. Then we're going to call it with a capital G guideline. And that's it, finished. We're going to save again. And then we're going to build a rule that's going to automatically populate the guideline based on the reason that is selected by the manager. So this one. So how do we build this rule? So it's pretty simple. We take an existing rule at the bottom, for example, this one, and then we copy this rule and we call it set guideline field, copy, and then we're going to clear everything that's in here. And clear all. And so we're going to do if reason is extraordinary performance, then set guideline to be equal to 3% to 6%. And then we're going to add an else if, and we're going to copy this, and we're going to do catch up on competing offer, copy this, 2 to 5%, and same thing, add else if, paste, and so the last one would be market adjustment, and that would be 6 to, no, let's put a wider range here, 2 to 8%. And it's just for display, it's not forcing the manager to enter anything. The only capping is at 10%. So we save this, and then once it's saved, so we can leave this pop-up with our new rule, with our new ID. Once it's saved, all we have to do is go back to this MDF object and put it on just like we did for this one, initialize rule. So we're going to add this other, so make correction, go to the bottom, and where we find the initialize rule for set current salary and current comp ratio, that's where we're going to add set guideline field and save. In order to see this rule on the profile, we have to do one more thing. We have to edit the configure business, what is called configure UI. So if I were to go right now on the profile, and we can actually test by doing that, exactly that. If I go to employee profile and I go as a super admin this time, I also have permission on this object. If I go here to off-cycle increase, for myself, I'm a super admin, so I can do anything. Here, I can't see the guideline field, so I can see everything, but not the field that I just created. That's normal because once you make edits to an MDF object, you have to reflect the changes in what is a menu called an admin center screen called configure UI. So I actually should type UI, manage configuration UI. And in Manage Configuration UI, that's where we're going to find the one that was already added, off-cycle increase. I know there is a way to add the new field directly from here. I don't remember exactly how to do it. So the way I do it is I delete my configuration UI and I just create a new one. It's really quick. So I call it off-cycle increase. And then I select the base object off-cycle increase and save. And that's it. The last thing I need to do now to make this new guideline field visible on the profile is to go to configure people profile. And in the block where I added this MDF object under compensation, here I need to select off-cycle increase, live profile MDF information, and reselect the configuration UI that we just created. So here, select off-cycle increase and save. Just going to make sure I don't hit pause on the recording. Yep, save. And once it's saved, we can go ahead and test. So I'm going to proxy as Allison Mahoney again, the manager, and do the exact same test maybe on someone else. So if I take if I take another employee, for example, Alexander, and I go to off-cycle increase. So now, now I should be able to see guideline. Yep, I can see it. And so based on what I select here in reason, extraordinary performance, I can see now, oh, my guideline hasn't worked. So that's okay. We're gonna try to see what is happening. I think I need to add it also on the effective date. Let's see. So let's go back to configure people profile. Sorry, manage configure object definition. Select off-cycle increase, make correction, and we're going to add this rule also on the effectives on the custom reason. I think that's the reason. That's why it's missing. So I'm going to add it here as well. So here, set guideline field. Yeah, finished. So we had to add it also on top of the bottom here in initialize rules, also add it on the reason, custom reason here. And I just realized that the custom reason were also, they also had this rule to set current salary and current comp ratio, which is actually I forgot to explain earlier. So the one at the bottom is important, but this one is the one that triggers the population of these values upon selection of a reason, which is a mandatory field. So if I do save here and I go back as Allison, so if I take Alexander again, or anyone, someone else, Blake. So I go to off-cycle increase, click on add new, and then a reason, market adjustment, and then we can see the guideline populate. If we change this to extraordinary performance, the guideline gets updated 3 to 6. And then catch up on competing offer 2 to 5. So I think this concludes the demo and explanations on how to build complicated MDF objects with complicated approval workflows. One thing maybe to conclude is that I think I mentioned it earlier, is that there is a way to build through the integration center a job that will take whatever has been approved through the approval workflows as off-cycle increases and automatically push it to the comp info portlet of Employee Central. I'm not going to go into the detail of how to do this in this recording, but I will add a link to an existing blog post I made last year on how to use the Integration Center, and maybe I will post a follow-up video later on how to do this. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.